Scott.
And
Fuck you, you bastard.
Hey, and fuck everybody! How are you?
And how are you doing today, everyone? Welcome, listeners, all you new listeners, and everybody returning, and anyone who cares out there. This is the Spoiler Room. I am your host, Mark the Movie Man, and tonight on our discussion ballot is 80s apocalypse films. Why? Because, well, Interstellar does have an apocalypse theme to it, and I've been wanting to talk about these films for a while, so I got a great crew in the room tonight. First off, returning to the crew after missing him quite dearly is Brad. Brad is back in the room. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, you actually noticed I was gone?
Yeah.
Wow! Well, it's good to be back.
Well, we missed those comic book insights, if nothing else, sir. And then,
Wow, I feel sad for all of you. I really do. That's like the highlight of stuff.
and we have also in the room again with us Cole Meredith. Cole, how you doing, sir?
Marvelous. Very well. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing fine, especially now that we got this group in the room.
Hell yeah.
And then we've got the one and only big friggin' deal himself, Mr. Glenn Bittner. How you doing, sir?
Daddy would have gotten us Uzis.
And returning to us, the newer member of the room, he's back with us. He was talking Halloween horror films, and now he's back. Paul, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. I feel like Wayne and Garth because you guys I've like listened to for like several weeks, several months, and it's like I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy.
Dear
But you guys
Lord.
are
Man, you gotta set a higher bar.
Oh, I was gonna say.
That's how we got the third guy for Film Geek Central.
In his defense, all he probably had was a whole bunch of political ads on TV, so what else are you going to listen to? A bunch of us sit here talk about films, right? And finally, last but definitely not least, Mr. Scott Davis himself is here with us tonight. How you doing today, Scott? Oh, that's lovely.
Mark, I'm gravely disappointed. Again, you have made me unleash my dogs of war.
Keep your dogs on a leash there, Scott. We really don't want to see those. We really don't want to see those tonight. And as I said, we're talking 80s apocalypse films. Yes, there have been apocalypse films since, but I don't think there's been a decade that spawned more apocalypse films than the 80s. I mean, if you just do a search in Google Chrome, you will find a plethora, a cornucopia of post-apocalyptic themed movies. I mean, you're talking the 80s, the big red scare, the Cold War, nuclear war is on, fear's on the rise, and I tell you, the B movies really came out, and the whole post-apocalyptic thing was a really popular theme. So I asked everyone tonight to kind of bring a post-apocalyptic film they'd like to talk about, and we're going to start right off with Mr. Brad tonight because he's got one that he mentioned that I really want to talk about. So go ahead, Brad.
So, I really didn't get into like movie watching until I got a VCR. Back in my day, I got a VCR in my house in I don't know, 87 or something like that, and I started to find movies like true gems like Life Force and just really shitty movies. I'm not gonna but one of them was Hell Comes to Frogtown. Now, here's the thing: your main actor in this film is okay, kids, sit down and Uncle Brad's going to tell you a story. Now, the World Wrestling company, whatever you want to call it, that exists today, the WWE, was once named the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And much like your John Cena that you have now and your Rock that has now transitioned to cinema, you had Rowdy Roddy Piper.
Yes!
And
awesome.
he's an interesting dude, and he will never do Shakespeare. Or if he does, he will never do it well. But um, for the time, I mean, he did They Live. I mean, hands down, if you think of any good sci-fi film that came out of the 80s, They Live will be on the top of that list.
Oh, it should be, man.
And he plays the main character in that. Now we have Hell Comes to Frogtown. Hell Comes to Frogtown is not that movie. It's not. It's something. And here's the deal. The basic premise of this movie is that Rowdy Roddy Piper, who plays Sam Hell in this post-apocalyptic world where all the major governments just kind of went crazy and pushed all their buttons and just blew up the world, essentially. He's got like super peen, where he can just, stick it inside of a woman and just make her pregnant. And the majority of the males in this post-apocalyptic world have died in the war, or they've been rendered sterile. And, bring in Super Peen Johnson here, and he can, just make women pregnant. And right now there is a sort of a new type of Cold War in that they need to escalate their population so that they can finish this war finally. They're playing the long game, Not gonna lie there. They're playing the long game. But now, Sam Hell is not a good man. He's not a great man, but he's a man with the super peen, and he's been co-opted by the government that is left in the I guess what's left of the United States, and his mission is to impregnate all the women that are able to bear children, because not just the men have been rendered sterile, but the women have too. So he's been co-opted by the government to just bang a bunch of women and get them pregnant. And that's kind of the deal. But the other side mission here is that a bunch of fertile women were actually captured by, and this is the best part, these anthropomorphic frog-like beings. So in the process of this nuclear war, it mutated amphibians, frogs, into humans in a relatively short period of time. Now, don't look at the plot hole here, because it's huge. It's huge. But, so now Sam Hell has got to run this mission into Frogtown to free these fertile women, and then he's got to nail them and get them pregnant. Huh? Yeah.
Oh, you forgot about his chastity belt.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the other thing, too, is he signs a contract with the government, and Super Peen is now owned by the government. It is now a registered weapon with the government, because it's going to be used to knock up all sorts of fertile women, because they've got to win the war in population now. So, yeah.
He's got that. He's got an explosive, basically, chastity belt that he has to stay in range of another a female soldier played by
Sandahl Bergman.
Yes.
And Sandahl Bergman is very interesting in that.
In many ways. But.
Well, she's one of those, and I can't speak for the rest of y'all, but I can say that at this point that I saw this movie, I would have been like 17. She made my parts tingle. I'm not gonna lie. And she's not devastatingly beautiful in any way, shape, or form, I guess.
She was badass, though.
But yes,
badass and earthy, yeah. And really seemed down to earth, but beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, but her thing is, and what made her great for movies. One, she was a dancer. Mm-hmm. She was trained as a dancer. Two, she's also trained as a stunt woman. And she can act.
Yes.
So now you've got a very physically fit, physically adept person that they don't have to hire extra stunt people for to do things. and can recite lines. Woohoo! And that's what you get here. But I don't want to besmirch what she's done because she was in Conan.
Oh yeah, she was fantastic in Conan. I think she's an underappreciated actress for the time.
Looking at now, I mentioned Sandahl Bergman, I mentioned Roddy Piper, and they've both done. I mean, we've just called up 2 movies that they've done that have been great movies that are unforgettable. The Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan film is huge.
Yes.
For Sword and Sorcery in the 80s, Conan's on the top of your list. It's just the material, and I mean, this is shot as a B movie. There's no two ways about it. The amphibious creatures that you get are not Stan Winston issue. They are paper mache heads at best, with some oil rubbed on them to make them look sort of wet. So yeah, that's the gem of post-apocalyptic. I could have brought Mad Max to the show. No. I brought Hell Comes to Frogtown. You're welcome.
Let's talk with the rest of the room. Cole, have you seen Hell Comes to Frogtown, sir?
I have, man. It's a trip. I actually just saw it recently, and I enjoyed myself. My girlfriend was not too impressed. But
did she not like the dance of the 3 snakes?
Oh boy, for my money, if you want, I mean, and she's instructed, hey, if you want to live, you got to get all 3 snakes. And she's like, what? And then she gets out there, and the Lord Emperor's got 3 wands worth of junk under his. What I can't. Was it a loincloth? I'm not sure. If it was a robe that he was wearing. It was just weird.
Just comes up and says, "I'm not going anywhere near them things."
Yeah, but the best thing, if you're going to take out a guy who is aroused as he was with 3 penises, you get not 1 kick to the balls, you get 3. Because if 1 is good, 3's gotta be amazing, and that's what you get.
So, Cole, your girlfriend wasn't impressed, but you enjoyed it?
No, I enjoyed it though. Especially just the novelty of Roddy Piper being in it and being a massive They Live fan. I thought I'd never seen him in anything else other than really, really, really cheaply made action movies on Cinemax as a teenager. So I had a good time watching it. I really did. It was fun. It was an entertainment in its purest form.
It definitely is. Glenn, what about you, sir, in Hell Comes to Frogtown?
Oh gosh, yes. if the hot rod is in it,
My favorite wrestler. He's awesome.
I think that's a lot of people's favorite wrestler. That man, there was very few people who could work a microphone like he could. And when he started into acting, it was just hilarious. When I saw it, I was the same way. I watched anything he was in because it was Hot Rod, It was like,
wait, when he started into acting, what did you think the wrestling was?
Well, okay, yeah. Now, let's not get into that discussion. So you enjoyed Hell Comes to Frogtown as well, Glenn?
I did.
Any favorite part in there for you, sir?
Yeah, it's been a long since I watched it, but just the whole concept between his, Roddy basically just going pregnant, pretty much, his ability.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? Have you seen the classic Hell Comes to Frogtown?
I have not. I added it to my list.
Oh yeah, you gotta.
It's an hour and a half of your life you're not gonna get back, but you're gonna enjoy it in all of its ball kicking glory.
I'm looking at the cast list, and the names that they came up for the characters are amazing.
I love Looney Tunes, Commander
Looney Tunes, Squid Lips, the poor doofus.
I like the name Sentinella. How about that one? There you go.
Sounds like a candle.
Yeah, to scare away mosquitoes.
Exactly.
Sandahl Bergman's name was Spangle.
Yeah.
By the way, she was in. We were talking about Freddy's Nightmares. She was in an episode or 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was.
So, and Mr. Davis, words on Hell Comes to Frogtown?
Well, I mean, you guys said it. It's just a wonderful. I mean, if you love campy action, sci-fi comedies, I mean, this is one of the best. I own the DVD. I bought it twice, I think. It's great. And here's the funny thing though. We all of us have been like laughing because, and rightfully so, because it's so weird and low budget and stuff. But this got a theatrical release from New World Pictures,
Yes.
and it was undoubtedly the biggest budget director Donald G. Jackson ever worked with.
Really?
If you've looked at his other things, this is not the only post-apocalyptic film he made. This guy made like about a dozen. I mean, most of his movies were post-apocalyptic films, but his budgets kept getting shorter and shorter and shorter. So you had the Rollerblade movies, which are about a post-apocalyptic film about nuns who worship a happy thing.
Oh, God.
There are technically 4 Frogtown movies. Technically.
Wow, really?
There's technically 4. Really, there's 3, because the third one got released in an unapproved cut first, and then it went to a director's cut later on. So you actually have you have Frogtown 2, Return to Frogtown, which is a semi-big budget, though Roddy Piper isn't in it. Now it's Robert Zadar.
No way!
Wait, Robert. Oh, shit.
The man who could rent his face out for billboards, yes.
And you get a different person playing Dr. Spangle, too, don't you?
Oh, you get a different person playing everybody. And at one point, they have to rescue Lou Ferrigno, who is slowly turning into a frog.
What?
Because don't forget, because of Lou Ferrigno's speech impediment, that means you do get to hear him say "whippet" in the movie. It is awesome. And after that, around the time that Donald G. Jackson passed away or something, they did the third movie or whatever.
Max Hell Frog Warrior?
Max Hell Frog Warrior, and it's also called Toad Warrior because there are 2 different cuts.
Oh my God! How did I know about this? 2002.
It is so cheap. It is so cheap. It is very cheap, and it is all. It's done with Zen filmmaking, which is something Jackson and Scott Shaw came up with, which was you get the people together, you're in a location, and then you just improvise everything. Everything is improvised.
Oh hell! I'll watch it. It's got Joe Estevez in it.
Got Joe Estevez, a lot of Joe Estevez. Yeah, and he was in like lots of Jackson films like Roller Gator, which is almost unwatchable. I love Donald G. Jackson. God rest his soul. And Scott Shaw is a guy who's continuing that thing. But believe it or not, as much as we laugh and stuff, rightfully so, this is as coherent and big budget as Donald G. Jackson ever got.
With Hell Comes to Frogtown, the first one?
Hell Comes to Frogtown is as coherent and big budget. Everything else got a lot looser, a lot cheaper.
Oh, he directed Class of Nukem High Part 2, Subhumanoid Meltdown.
Nice.
Well, he was additional director, they said.
Additional director, yeah, it means he was on the set, and they said the other guys hung over. Don? Sure.
Exactly. Exactly.
He just happened to wander on set. He thought this was another Frogtown movie.
He's the one who put the mutant squirrel in there.
There you go. So Hell Comes to Frogtown. Excellent first film to start off this conversation. Thank you, Brad. And I think you gave the best synopsis I've ever heard of that movie.
It's wonderful. It's great, dude. That was great.
That brought a tear to my eye. It really did.
Well, I'm glad I could make you cry.
And Cole, what movie did you bring for us to discuss tonight?
I was torn between my favorite and the best. So I think I'm going to go with the best, which I actually think is the first of John Carpenter's Apocalypse trilogy, he calls it. Followed by Prince of Darkness and then In the Mouth of Madness. But his version of The Thing is, some may not consider it an apocalypse movie, although it was intended as such, is really the penultimate apocalypse movie of the 80s for me. Opening with a shot of the Earth and the ship breaking apart, and you see it slowly go towards the planet. you know nothing good is going to happen. And then that whole opening sequence with, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right, Ennio Morricone, his opening score there with the them chasing the dog over the snow for miles, and that repetitive score that kind of sounds like a heartbeat, almost like a human heartbeat. It feels like the end of the world, and the movie has not even started. And what's interesting to me about the movie, it's so hard to get serious after talking about Frog. But I should be talking about Maximum Overdrive, as Shelley should have put that up. But
you could have gone with Maximum Overdrive.
I almost did.
We'll let you slide with the Thing, though. It's yeah, okay. Well, apocalyptic.
It is an apocalyptic film. I was. If it's not post, it's happening.
It's
happening.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me about the Thing is like the breakdown of trust between men, which many other people have tried after that and probably before that. But the fact that it's an all-male cast, I think is really interesting to see the slow breakdown of these males who've been living with each other for a long time. A lot of them Vietnam vets. I know that's implied. It's not stated, but it's definitely there. And, I mean, Kurt Russell being a dead ringer for later days, Jim Morrison, is really, really cool, I thought. And, man, that whole hopeless tone follows through the whole thing right up to the ending where they're having a drink, him and Keith David. Yeah, are sitting there, you know, and they both know that somebody's the Thing. One of them is the Thing. And there's just no way to trust each other anymore. There is absolutely no way for either of them to trust each other anymore, and they've completely accepted it. And all there is to do is have a drink. Nowhere to go. Everything is burned. They're going to be dead very shortly, and they're just going to have a drink and see what happens.
I loved how that movie ended.
Yeah.
You didn't get to find out.
No.
And that was the first time I realized in cinema, in American cinema, that you could do that.
Right.
And it was okay. Because we like to have our shit all tied up in a bow and, oh, that's what happened. No, that was the horror of the Thing at the end, you know? It's like these two people that have survived everything that you've come to, like, root for. One of them's the bad guy.
Yeah.
And then you're done.
Well, not only is one of them the bad guy, but this fits in with the apocalypse theme in that one of them's the bad guy, and he's going to freeze but not completely die.
Exactly.
You know he's going to freeze, somebody's going to find him, and it's going to start over, and it's going to spread. And for me, I just literally reviewed this on our Horror Thursday for We Live Film today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just reviewed it. So it's funny you brought that up, but for me, I mean, what I pointed out too is we're talking the 80s, we're talking the paranoia of communism, of who can you trust, and that is addressed so perfectly through using the alien in this film, to where all these guys who started off trusting each other, suddenly there's a little question of one's loyalty, and it just spreads to every single one of them, and you don't know. Plus, this movie just has freaking awesome practical effects. I think it got overlooked from the Academy. I mean, the practical effects in this film freaking rocked.
Well, I think its release coincided with E.T., and it just is one of those political things, I think, where it just became, it was just bad timing. But Rob Bottin, man, he worked himself practically into his grave. At one point, he ended up in the emergency room just from overwork. I mean, and I also want to, before we move on, mention Wilford Brimley.
Yes.
I think that performance is so fun because at some point he becomes the Thing. So just to watch how he plays it, I think.
The best story about that is they were having a really kind of a rough shoot during that time, and
really?
Carpenter didn't feel like he was, had that not everybody was given their best, and they shot the scene right before he exposes the fact that he's the Thing, and he stops and he points at Brimley. He goes, "What are you thinking about right now, or while you're doing that performance?" He's like, "I got to do my laundry right after this." And he's like, "And he gave an awesome performance."
I did
Yeah,
not
I
become the thing 'cause I
love
wanted
Brimley
to.
in
I
this
became the
movie.
thing because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Because of the diabetes.
We're never gonna grow old. We're never gonna die because we're aliens. We're aliens.
Aliens that eat Quaker oats.
Paul, what about you, sir? Any thoughts on the thing?
I did. I loved the claustrophobia nature of the film, where everyone just seemed like they were just in this like enclosed area of the, and with the storm running outside. And my favorite scene out of the entire movie was when they're all tied up and they were doing that test.
Yes.
And just imagine being sitting right next to a guy that could be that thing, and then suddenly it jumps up and goes, "Ah!" And everyone's like, get! Get on Timmy!
Well, what's great about that too is you not only have the threat of the thing, but you've got the threat of the weather constantly outside. I mean, adding that fact. I mean, if this was done in the tropics, you have less of a threat. But the fact that if they go outside, they could die. Much less, be inside with the thing. You got to choose your poison.
Yeah, man.
Glenn, what'd you think of the
If you had
thing?
women in the cast, it would have thrown. If you had put sexual tension into this, it would have been a completely different film. Hence the remake.
Yeah.
The remake / sequel. Yeah.
Prequel.
You need the male bonding that slowly breaks down, and I think that's a lot of the charm of this. Is, I think male bonding can be just as good as. I mean, it's kind of downplayed in politically nowadays, but male bonding rocks. Old-fashioned male bonding, maybe it's that I grew up around bars, not in bars, but around the culture. I tell you, I'm from Wisconsin. What can I say? But
There you go.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of men love each other like brothers, and there's a monster, and it never looks like one monster. That's another thing in this movie is there's not one face you can pin it on, which is the opposite of what some people consider Carpenter's, penultimate film, Halloween. I actually think this is Carpenter's penultimate film. I think this is Carpenter's signature movie.
Sure.
I think it's flawless. I love it, man.
The way to kind of add to your point, I think if you would have had female cast members as a part of that, I think at that point in time, it wasn't a mindset that women could hang out with guys in the North for long periods of time. I mean, women in the military, I think at that time were not really that big of a thing either.
Yeah.
It was frowned upon. But two, I think it kept focus.
Oh yeah.
It didn't add an element. It was unnecessary to the story. It would have added, or it would have been ignored, and people would have went, well, what about, why didn't they screw her? Or, why didn't teeth come out of her vagina or whatever? I mean, it kept the focus.
It's a completely different film.
Yeah.
But it has happened. Remember John Carpenter. We all go back to the films that he would have loved, and of course it comes from the thing. It's a remake of The Thing from another world and stuff, which is different and such. But we also got to remember one of the films he always was remaking was Rio Bravo.
Yeah.
Because he was a huge fan of Howard Hawks and John Ford, and if you look at Rio Bravo, one of the greatest films ever, there's a love story in there, but it is completely separate from the actual core thing, which are these three guys, and the drunk, and the old guy there. I keep forgetting about him. I guess 4 guys. But these 4 guys, just trying to trust one another and build up this trust. And he's done that over and over again. He did it in Assault on Precinct 13. He did it in Vampires. He did it in the Escape from New York movies, both of them. It's really is constantly that Howard Hawks model, and he's very honest about, and that's all about male bonding, and that those are very machismo films without being a real dickish machismo thing, which I think would get lost today. Because nowadays you think about that, you think about these, asshats who are like pushing women around. It's not like that at all. It's just it was just a completely different venue, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely, man.
Glenn, I tried to get your thoughts real quick on The Thing. Anything to add to this film for you? Anything memorable or?
Well, the movie itself is memorable.
Right.
But I would recommend anyone that has seen this movie get the DVD commentary and watch and listen to the commentary.
Oh,
absolutely not to be missed.
Mm-hmm.
It is such a blast, especially when you get towards the end of the movie and they're tossing around dynamite. You can hear about what they were using because of budget cuts, that the explosives were a little more explosive than they should have been.
Well, I've got the Blu-ray. I don't know if you guys got the Blu-ray, but The Thing cleans up fantastically.
Yeah, it does. I got it.
I watched it on the Blu-ray. I had the Blu-ray for a while. Hadn't put it in. I popped it in, and I was like, holy, this looks like it was shot yesterday. I mean, it is that clean. They did a really good restore on it. But, yeah, the DVD had a great commentary. I think that same one's on the Blu-ray. I don't know if they did another one for the Blu-ray, but
I think it's the same one. I'm not positive. But I think
probably
it's
the same one. It's got to be better. If you guys ever listened to the commentary for Big Trouble in Little China,
They're talking about their kids.
it's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love the commentary for Big Trouble in Little China because Carpenter and Russell hadn't seen each other for like a year or they hadn't talked much, and so they got together because they pulled them together for the Blu-ray. And about halfway through the film, they stopped talking about the movie and started going, "So what you been up to lately, John?" And John's like, "Oh, my kids, you know." And Kurt Russell's like, "How your kids doing?" I love the chemistry between Carpenter and Russell. Definitely two guys that work well together. And this film, man, it blows me away every time I see it. I love every minute of it. It is a must-see for every horror fan. It does have apocalypse themes, but just in general. And, you know, they didn't need that prequel. The reason, you know, I didn't mind the prequel. Don't get me wrong. I actually didn't mind it. It was better.
I actually sort of liked it. It just does not compare.
Right. It was better. It was better than I thought it would be. I just thought it was unnecessary because part of the cool creepiness of the alien is when they go to that camp that we now know the story behind. But not knowing the story behind it added a whole nother level of just creepiness and unknown to the alien, so that made it even scarier because you weren't quite sure why this guy off himself and what is this pile of whatever set fire in the square at the Swedish camp, you know. Mm-hmm. And that unknown, I think, really helped add to the creepy of the alien because you never get a full explanation ever of what its intent, what it actually is. It's just, you know, it could very well just be a beast that's just trying to survive. So, you know, by doing that prequel, I think it took just a little bit away, but this is a classic. As anyone can tell, we all love this film dearly because it is just one of those films that are a must-see because, and with the practical effects, really, it stands the test. You look at
really does. Yeah,
with the practical effects, it's hard to date this film with those practical effects. I think if you had CGI in there, you could date it easier, but with those practical effects, you could have made it yesterday. It looks that good, especially on the Blu-ray. So, excellent choice there, Mr. Cole.
Thanks, man.
And Glenn, let's go to yours, sir. What post-apocalyptic film, out of the many that all of us have seen, which one did you bring that you wanted to talk about?
Well, did I go for one of the obvious, you know, with Mad Max Road Warrior? I didn't. Did I go for when Treadwell met Johnson, Cherry 2000? No.
Oh, yes, no.
Did I go for roller skating kids in the desert with solar babies? No. Did I decide maybe Sondel Bergman in She? No.
No.
Did I go for the double-bearded power of Patrick Swayze and Brian James in Steel Dawn? No.
No.
I went for what is the feather in the cap of classic film and television actor Rory Calhoun's cap. Rollerblade Warriors, Taken by Force.
I haven't seen it. Oh man, it's one of the Jackson films. And I haven't seen it.
Tell us about this film, man.
Oh my gosh, it's about a warrior nun who is with her basically warrior nun buddies who roller skate through the apocalyptic wasteland. It is yes. They're dressed like they're dressed like strippers, wearing roller skates. So they call them rollerblade warriors, even though they wear roller skates. But we won't nitpick. But yeah, I mean they have to rescue the seer who's going to be sacrificed by this band of mutants. It is so laughably bad.
Oh my god.
That it's still
What's it called?
Rollerblade Warriors.
I'm gonna write this down.
Rollerblade taken by force.
Having
an L on wheels.
Subtitle in, right?
Would you like
All right, man.
want to tell him why it was colon?
Yes.
No, do you want to tell him why? Because there was a lot of these movies.
This movie was originally called Powerblade Warrior by Force.
Wow. I'm pulling this up now. Holy cats. Why have I not seen this?
The best thing
1989.
about this is it spawned a sequel.
Oh, did it really?
Now I'm going to go a little bit out of the 80s to 92 because we had Return of the Rollerblade 7. Which, now, the biggest star in original Rollerblade Warriors would have been Elizabeth Catane, or not Catane, Kinmont. Who, if you ever watched the TV series Renegade, she was
Kathleen Kinmont, yeah.
she was in Renegade, along with a bunch of other stuff. But she was the biggest star in that. In the sequel, they got Karen Black, they got Frank Stallone, and they got Joe Estevez.
Oh my god. I love Joe Estevez. He's in everything.
Yeah, and you get all three of them in this one.
That's
It's just
great.
amazing. Oh, and Scott Shaw, if anyone knows who Scott Shaw is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Shows up again. Wow.
It's Donald G. Jackson again. It's the same guy who did Frogtown.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
man.
Frogtown movies and his rollerblade movies.
Yeah.
If you look it up on IMDb, folks, you actually have to put in the full title Rollerblade Warriors Taken by Force or it will not show up.
All right.
If you just search Rollerblade Warriors, it will not show up.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. There was also the Rollerblade 7.
Ah.
So yes, he did a whole bunch of these rollerblade people movies.
And the Hateful
Yes.
Eight. Oh wait, nope. That's
It was Rollerblade 7, Return of the Rollerblade 7, Legend of the Rollerblade 7. This movie came before those.
Yes.
And before this was the thing I was briefly talked about. I'm glad I didn't go into details because I didn't want to step on Glenn's awesome pick here. But then before that, there was the first Rollerblade, which again was not on rollerblades; it was on roller skates.
Oh. And Kathleen Kinmont was in the Reanimator 2.
Yeah, she was the bride of Reanimator. Yeah, she was the bride. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great film.
Yes.
Wow.
Go forth now and skate the path of righteousness.
Yes, they talk. Now, Glenn, I'm serious. Even though I've talked about loving Donald G. Jackson stuff, believe it or not, I've only seen the first Rollerblade film, so I haven't seen this one yet. Even though I've got it here and waiting to watch it. Do they speak in the Old English? Because in the first one they did.
No, not really. I mean, if I remember right, little bits here and there. It's been a while since I've watched this one because I can't track it down.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I had to find an old VHS rip because I couldn't find it either.
Yeah, I can't even find a torrent of it to actually it's not available anywhere.
Yeah, like I said, it's what I.
Wow. The cinema world does not want this film to exist.
The first one, they talked in this old English, like, yea, verily, and stuff like this, and there were these nuns that worship the Have a Nice Day face and carried switchblades. But no, the great thing is that there's a kid in the first Rollerblade. Again, this is not Glenn's pick because I haven't had a chance to see it yet. I want to see it so bad. But there's a kid in there, and the kid was played by Chris Olin Ray, the son of Fred Olin Ray.
Oh, wow.
And who's gone on to direct movies and stuff. And of course now Chris Olin Ray is I'm sure some of you guys is like a Facebook friend and stuff like that. And I remember noting earlier this year that I said, I'm going to give this one another watch, and it was Rollerblade. I said, look at this, Chris Olin Ray's in it. And Chris Olin Ray actually responded and said, don't do it. Don't do it. Because knew that all the dialogue, it's a bad movie, all the dialogue is dubbed by other people, and yes, Chris Olin Ray is dubbed by a woman who is obviously about 40 years old.
Gentlemen, go to the chat real quick. I know our listeners can't listen to this, but go to the chat. There's a link below the IMDb one. Amazon has Rollerblade Warriors, Kathleen Kinmont,
Oh,
$24.95 on DVD. It is in stock.
What? How did is that a DVD-R, or where'd that come from?
I have no idea.
Or, if you want to go really ballsy, you can drop $46 and get the Rollerblade 7 trilogy.
Well, why wouldn't you?
And it actually, I'll bet you this comes from Scott Shaw's own production, because if you look at the 3-pack, it actually has the last names.
Oh,
It's Shaw, Stallone,
Oh my
Estevez,
God! They
Brown.
also have Hawk, Warrior of the Wheel Zone.
yeah, and Rollerblade Warriors is
God,
on
I heard
Amazon
that.
for those. And if you like the instant video, Rollerblade Warriors Taken by Force is on Amazon Instant Video. I feel that there is going to be a review in the future of this.
Oh man, this stuff has movieocracy.
Looking at the cover of this thing, it looks like a visual punch in the ball.
Actually, it looks like a Rod Stewart video.
Oh.
I mean, that leather is just jammed right up in there. That's really comfortable. How do you fight in that?
So funny because, I haven't seen these movies, but I did use footage from one of the Rollerblade Warriors movies in my first episode of Movieocracy.
Glenn's ordering it right now.
It's like, it's like typing. That's an amazing choice.
That is
oh my God.
that is
I'm so excited right now. I really am.
That was a great pick there, Glenn.
You can thank Rhonda from USA.
Oh,
Rhonda's here, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, Rhonda, she really broken all of us with all these great cult classic films. Rollerblade Warriors, $24.95 for anyone interested on Amazon. Watch their sales suddenly jump on this film. Poor Amazon guy in the warehouse is going to go into some back corner and dust it off.
You're like,
Who's purchasing this crap? Is what he's saying.
We were going to put this in the junk pile, and I've sold 5 copies. What the hell? So, wow. Excellent. Definitely an apocalyptic film that needs to be watched by everyone. Oh, wow. So, Paul.
I don't know if I can top that one, but I'm going to try.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm cheating a little bit. Mine actually takes place 31 years after World War III.
Oh, okay. That's fine.
it's post.
It's technically post-apocalyptic.
That is
But they
post.
kind of rebuilt it, rebuilt the city that it plays in. But it is also a cartoon. It's 1988's Akira.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Basically, the movie starts out with the destruction of Tokyo, which does invariably cause World War III. And then 31 years later, we fast forward it, and we get to Neo Tokyo, which is kind of built on a landfill in Tokyo Bay. Why not, right? But I think what I really liked about this movie is it introduced manga and anime to a lot of the people that are in the Western world. As much as people say that Pokemon was their first, yeah. I think Akira was really the first for me. I just love the visuals and the soundtrack. They had that hypertone that the composer was playing around with. So I really want to get a good sound system one day and just really play what that hypertone is, so that supposedly it's supposed to affect you even though you can't hear it. So,
I want to be affected by this movie bad. No, Akira, you're right. It did introduce a lot of people who weren't aware of that type of animation to them. And not only that, but it introduced the idea. I mean, we had it before, but I don't think it was done with the. It was most adult animation type films were kind of considered. I think, in my opinion, I may be off, but you guys can throw me against the wind on it. But I think most of the mature animation films up until that point were considered like art house type animation, like kind of obscure animation. Akira is the first, I think, one of the first mature animated films that people saw could be a bigger budget, for lack of a better term, a better quality movie, a serious movie that actually, had a solid narrative, a serious narrative to it, and wasn't just Fritz the Cat, or wasn't just some weird artsy animation, with a Coke bottle with dinosaurs coming out of it. And if you had, I think it was called Allegro non troppo, stuff like that. So this one, I think, I love it. I love Akira. It took me a while to see it, but I remember being blown away by it, going, "Wow, what else is out there like it?" I mean, what about you guys, Brad? Or
I think, like, for me, the first movie that I saw that would be quote unquote like adult animation, or at least adult themed, not porn, but
right.
Adult themed, was actually Bakshi's Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah, okay.
Now, and the only reason why I'm mentioning this is, at the time I thought, oh, well, you've got, the rotoscope, that different bit there, maybe that's what makes it adult. And then I saw Akira a little while later, and it was like, no, it was actually taking the medium seriously and writing a good story that told themes that adults would understand, and didn't matter what medium was being used to tell it, but they chose to use this animation style that to me had been, like the real Ghostbusters, or, I'm dating myself here, but, just reserved for children.
Sure.
And it was really eye-opening, and disturbing. I mean,
it's
the first time I saw, like, was it Kaneda start freaking out and and he's like, all of a sudden his biological plate, like his arm shoots out and it's like a mile long, and it just it was
Tetsuo. Tetsuo was the guy that.
It was Tetsuo. Yeah. And it was just so creepy and disgusting, and I'm like, wow, you can actually do that with animation. That's so cool. So yeah.
Akira is a great film. Glenn, any thoughts on Akira?
I'm sorry, I got distracted because I found Rollerblade Warriors online in Russian. No, Akira's brilliant. It's probably one of my all-time favorite animes. It's actually the film that actually first got me into anime. Just a brilliant film all around. If you watch the real version.
Yeah, the real version, not the.
Not Canada.
Not
Canada.
Yeah, there are a couple different versions. If you can see the original version, it's definitely better.
And as far as like apocalyptic type anime goes, this one and Fist of the North Star are probably my two favorites.
Definitely two good picks. Paul, what about you? Any thoughts on Akira?
Definitely, I liked it since I picked it. But the best scene that I liked about it was the motorcycle scene when they're chasing the clowns. And,
right.
Tetsuo basically does this like really vicious, violent act against one of the clown things, and then the next scene he smashes into one of the espers, and that was just, to me, it was amazing to watch the lights and the energy of that scene in a cartoon was just like way beyond me at that age.
Sure. It has a lot of kinetic energy throughout that film. It's fast paced, that's for sure. Scott, what about you, sir?
Well, I'm kind of the on the other way around. I think it's a masterpiece. I love it. It's but here's the thing: is that I did grow up with some Japanese animation, even though I wasn't quite aware that's what it was. you're talking about dating yourself. I remember watching Battle of the Planets. And Star Blazers as a kid. Like those were the ones I loved because all you had to do was like put something in space, and I was like, yay, loving it. And I was always intrigued by this idea about animation being for adults. You know, I'd heard of the movie Heavy Metal, but you couldn't see Heavy Metal. It wasn't on VHS or anything. For the longest time, it wasn't on VHS or anything. The only real adult animated film I had seen up to that point was Rock and Rule, which I still love to this day. It's amazing. Oh my gosh, you should. When I met Steve Bureau and he said, "Yeah, we got the rights to Rock and Rule," I almost kissed the guy on the lips, man. He's like, he couldn't believe how much I freaked out over that movie. He like sent it to me sealed with as a gift as soon as it came out. He says, "I just couldn't believe how much you freaked out over this." Here. Anyway, that's not getting off the point. I'm sorry, but I mean, so Akira, I'd heard about, and I'd heard about the comics and stuff. I saw it and I was amazed. This is the film that people who don't like anime even like this movie.
Yes.
Everybody, it is. I can tell you that because, believe it or not, I'm actually, even though I grew up with this other stuff, I actually don't like anime that much. A few times a year, I will say, this sounds really interesting. I'm going to give this a shot. And I try so hard, I just can't get into it. I can only get into like about 10% of it, and the other 90% of it, I just like, oh, it's just not for me. But this movie like actually transcends, the era it was made in, the culture it was made in, the genre, the format. It transcends everything. It's beautiful as an animated film, but it would be beautiful as any kind of film because it's just a fantastic movie, So
definitely. So Akira, excellent choice there, Paul. I enjoy it myself. It was one for me that introduced me really to the anime style. Though I also was a big fan of Robotech, so.
And Robotech, I watched that every day too.
I remember Robotech because Robotech had the first time I ever saw a death in an animated film was in Robotech, and it had me keeping an eye out for others, and then I saw Akira and I was like, holy. This is amazing, but I remember that because in Robotech, I think it was one of the finales they had a nuclear, the Zentradi or whatever, just nuke the planet, and they've got a soldier handing a little girl a flower, and you see the shockwave come and obliterate her, and I was like, oh my god, you could do that with an animated film because, in U.S. you really hadn't seen anything up until then. So when I saw that, I was like, holy crap, And then you get Akira, and it's just like, animation doesn't have to be just for kids. And Akira is definitely a classic. I've been talking many, many years of doing a live action, I do believe. I don't know how far they've gotten with it, but they have talked about it. But I don't think it'll be quite as special as the animated version, really. Those usually don't translate fairly well to animated. I'm talking about you, Guyver, and Mark Hamill. Anyway,
in the group chat, I put a link to the Akira project, which they did create a live action trailer. It's a fan sourced.
Oh yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
beautiful. It's beautiful. If Hollywood could do that movie, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Of course, they never will, but yeah, those fan-made trailers usually are better than anything production ever came out of the studio. So, finally, Mr. Movieocrity, what apocalyptic film did you bring to the table today?
Well, I actually warned Mark about this. This might be easy or might be hard, but I didn't. Because so many of the films that I love in the post-apocalyptic thing all blend together in just like this really poorly dubbed casserole of and giant plastic shoulder pads and stock footage of Bikini Island, and everything like that. It's all kind of together. It's basically in the 1980s. When you wanted to find knockoffs, and it seems like that. I mean, when I think of post-apocalyptic, a lot of things I think of are all the Mad Max knockoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm just gonna generally say is the Mad Max knockoffs. you think of all these things, and the greatest knockoffs came from either Italy or the Philippines. And it was the same thing with here. Every great Filipino exploitation director working that day made some sort of post-apocalyptic film. You had Lucio Fulci did one. You had Enzo Castellari did one. You had Joe D'Amato did a bunch of them. You know, you had a lot of people doing them, and there were so many great ones. I didn't even get to watch all the ones I wanted. I rewatched, I think, we watched 2020 Texas Gladiators for the 5th time last week. I watched Final Executioner, and I love all those Italian knockoffs because they were so cheap, but I just love every single one of them. And then I also love the ones coming out of the Philippines, mostly by Sergio Santiago, who was often working for Corman when he would do films like Wheels of Fire and Striker. These are great drive-in flicks. The only specific film I'm going to mention, because it does not fit into either of those two categories of like Philippines or Italy, was one that was made in, I think it was Idaho. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is that it's not necessarily better than the other ones, but it kind of fits with the same thing, and it has a weird sense of humor to it and everything. And it's called Empire of Ash.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah! Cool. Brought out Glenn's Kool-Aid. Awesome. Empire of Ash is great. It's got, oh, God, what was her name? Melanie Kilgore, I want to say is her name, was in the lead. And William Smith was in there. And it had, like, these people. It wasn't a desert. It was, like, it was either Iowa or I think I want to say Idaho or Ohio, one of the O states, you know?
Yeah, that's the same guy that brought us
Idaho,
Time
yeah.
Runner.
Brought us what?
That's the same guy that brought us Time Runner with Mark Hamill.
Ah.
Yes.
Yeah, and he since brought us a lot of movies about bondage.
Yeah.
He does a lot of that's like he found his gravy train. Like, okay, tie him up, cool. But he did this movie, and it's so great. I'm going to, because you have these really bad road warrior type things, but they're going down these country roads, and they have these weird senses of humor and everything. And there are 2 movies. I say, even though if you look, you will see an Empire of Ash, an Empire of Ash 2, and an Empire of Ash 3. What do I mean? There's 2 movies. Let me tell you about how great of an exploitation FU to the audience this was. Empire of Ash did okay enough in home video that about a year later they released Empire of Ash 2 to home video. And anybody who took it home saw the title screen say Empire of Ash 2, but the movie was Empire of Ash 1 all over again. I mean, you can get pissed off if you want to, but kind of part of you has to go, holy shit, the balls on these people.
Wow.
Later on, they actually did do an Empire of Ash 3, which is also called Last of the Warriors. And it's as good as called. I am going to spoil one thing, because this has one of my favorite endings to any movie ever. They have like these really cheap kind of weapons that they're always trying to use in the movies, and the bad guys, like the one guy has this thing where you put a helmet on and he has missiles that launch from the helmet on his head, and it looks even cheaper than it sounds. And this movie ends, even though I think they do eventually use that weapon in Empire of Ash 3. This is the last shot of Empire of Ash, so I'm sorry if I'm going to spoil this, guys, for guys out there. But the last shot is the heroes are ready to make it, and then the guy, one of the villains, comes out. He has the helmet on. He's doing it, and it's having trouble firing. And he's looking up. He looks at it, kind of looks at the thing, like kind of in disgust, throws it down, just says, "Hell with it," and walks away. Credits. That's it's the most amazing, wonderful thing. I'm like, I love it that the movie ended not with a victory or a defeat, but of one of the villains saying, "I've got the jump on him." What? Oh, piece of shit. Fuck it. And
Wow.
wonderful. I couldn't believe seeing that in a movie. It changed my life.
Well, I hope everybody's writing these down. 'Cause, man,
These are great movies. You can just find them all. They're great. Here, I'm going to actually give you a YouTube link to the first Empire of Ash that I was digging up. Because I mean, you can't. Because I don't think you can get it on DVD right now.
Never let it be said the spoiler room doesn't bring you movies you haven't heard
There
of.
it is.
we definitely.
And then Glenn just added the thing too.
Yes.
God bless you, sir.
Oh man, everybody. And has anyone else got any weigh-ins on this movie of Empire Ash?
I have never seen it.
Nope, same here.
Yeah, me neither, unfortunately. But
Anybody else? Yeah, I don't think a lot of people have seen it.
I will. I definitely will.
Glenn.
Scott won Stump the Band. Good on you.
It's been so long since I've seen this.
Sure.
My friend had it on like a ripped VHS copy that was probably ripped off a VHS copy that was ripped off another VHS copy.
Yeah, man.
Probably started on Betamax.
Those are great.
5-generation rip. Screw you, torrents. That was the original way you shared movies. 2 VHS
I
decks.
think I spent half the movie doing the tracking.
If you don't know what tracking is, folks, look it up.
It's just one of the. It was. Let's just say it was the buffering of our day and age.
Instead of refreshing the screen because the audio and the video weren't syncing up, you turned the little tracking knob.
Yup.
Oh, for me, a number of great ones come to mind for it. Unfortunately, some of them are from the 70s, like Damnation Alley. Loved, Damnation Alley. Still one of those earlier post-apocalyptic films. And then, you had Soylent Green as well, older films. But for me, one of the fun ones, you could talk Escape from New York, but we've talked Carpenter already. I want to talk about Robot Jocks.
Oh my God!
There it is.
Oh, Mark, you the man.
Crash and burn, Mark. Crash and burn.
I'm going to say that I have taste in anything. I want to talk about Robot Jocks, brought to us from the guy who brought us Reanimator.
Yeah, Stuart Gordon.
Stuart Gordon, who also did a number of, he did Space Truckers, he did Fortress with...
From Beyond, I think?
Yeah, he did From Beyond as well, Pit and the Pendulum, he did all these. So, in the middle of all of this is Robot Jocks, direct-to-video film that I remember seeing the trailer for on front of some other VHS, and all I remember from it was they had robots, which looked great, but then... But then you had one of the main characters. Who was that? I forgot. He was like the poor man's. God, what is his name now? All I remember is he's standing on the ground and he goes, "I'm going to get this robot and I'm going to kick your." And they would cut the trailer so he wouldn't say ass because that was the big thing back then. Was
the character's name was Achilles. I know that. So.
Oh, Gary Graham. That's his name.
Yeah,
Gary Graham, because he went on to do some Alienation.
Yep.
Yep.
That's why I kept thinking of him.
That was him, actually.
Yeah, Gary Graham. He was hilarious in that. But this film is just so cheesy. But you gotta give him heart. This is back before Asylum Pictures. This is back. MGM put this out, and this film is just fun. The special effects. For what they do, we're talking a U.S. low-budget film, and they're doing fun robot fights in this film, and you got some great names in here like Athena and Achilles and Dr. Matsumoto. It takes place after World War
Tex
III.
Conway.
Yes, Tex Conway. But it takes place after World War III, and war is outlawed. But so the way they take care of conflicts is they have large robots that do the matches for them. I love this concept. It's superpowers. It's a rock'em stock of robots with superpowers. Among the nations, and so you've got the main character Achilles, who's the pilot of one of the large robots, and he has a match for the state of Alaska.
It's okay if you lose that one.
You fight for the state of Alaska. And if you think about when this was made, we're talking late 80s, this is in tail end, but you still kind of had that Russian scare, so Alaska was the key point, if you think about it, because that got you closest to Russia. So,
and you know what? Sarah Palin can see robots from her house. Sorry, I had to.
You had to, didn't you?
Boo!
Had to. But I just remember the special effects in this, and they had some great stuff in here. I mean, they had a lot of practical like robot hands and stuff that the guys would climb on, and just for a low budget film, direct to video of this nature, I give them total props for pulling this off because it's just a lot of cheesy fun. And, it just is. I like it. I don't know what you guys think of Robot Jocks, but I mean it's campy, I know, but I mean, what do you guys? Any guys have any feelings on Robot Jocks at all?
Well, when this film, when Real Steel came out, I thought that they were remaking this film originally.
I'm
And then
not
you're
gonna lie.
disappointed to find out they didn't.
Thing.
What? You thought the same thing?
I did.
I did too, actually. I saw that. I'm like, hey, they're gonna remake. Is Robot Jocks? See, now there's a film that could get remade today and look even better. Is Robot Jocks.
Well, I think it's worth noting. It's Stuart Gordon, and he always takes risks. I mean, if you look at Reanimator and From Beyond, there are scenes in both those movies that really how in the fuck did he get this by anybody? I mean, the head. I mean, really, if you think about a sequence like that in Reanimator, or much of the stuff in From Beyond, it could not get made nowadays and get released in the theater. And what's interesting to me, Mark, is you say this is direct to video, and I could be wrong, but this hit theaters, man, and I have this.
Did it really? I didn't remember it being in theaters.
Hit the theaters. In fact, as did Texas Chainsaw: The Next Generation, which I saw in a theater.
Oh God.
This was in theaters, and it was very limited. I think it was right on the bridge of direct-to-video, so they didn't know how to politically handle it, so they just threw it out in the minimal number of theaters possible to contractually fulfill whatever obligation they had. But Stuart Gordon fought a long, hard war for his final cut and ultimately lost. But it was meant to be much more demented and much more sinister, as to where the studio obviously wanted their, I guess, what was a PG-13 cut. I'm not sure what it was rated eventually.
PG.
But I still remember loving this movie. I think it's a great film. I think it's a lot of fun. I haven't seen it since the VHS days of, 88, 89?
Yeah.
Something like that. But I love the movie. I think it's got a style of its own. They attempted a pseudo sequel, Robot Warriors or something.
Robot Wars. Yeah.
Robot Wars. Yeah, that was kind of. It was not a sequel. Had nothing to do with it, but they were building on the success of it. And
Was that the one with the scorpion? That robot scorpion?
Yes.
I never saw it.
I can actually fill in some info if you don't mind. Is that this originally started out at Charles Band's Empire Pictures, and it is not low budget. It was actually, not for them anyway. It was their highest budget movie ever. I think it was estimated as like $10 million back then.
Yep. It's estimated.
And they went bankrupt. Empire Pictures, because of all their troubles, they basically overextended themselves with movies. and everything, and they were filming they had the Dino De Laurentiis studios that they had adopted as their own, and they had basically overextended themselves. They went bankrupt while finishing the film, so it didn't come out. I knew the film was about to come out because I was a Charles Band fanboy ever since I saw Laser Blast and Metal Storm as a kid. So I was always looking for anything from like Charles Band even as a kid. And I gave up hope of this ever being released, so I didn't see it at first. What I did do is I bought the novelization.
Oh, right.
They released the novelization of it, and I read the book.
Wow.
Which was 2 years before the movie, because eventually this startup, Epic Films, which was kind of like Triumph Films, just one of those little mini majors that never quite made it. They bought the rights to the film so that they could finish the post-production on it and gave it what they were trying to make a big release, but they could only really do a small release for it, and it made like a couple $1 million before going to VHS.
Yeah.
I read the book, but I read the book 2 years before. I was like lobbying for it, and when I finally saw that, it didn't come to Minnesota where I was, because back then a lot of things didn't come to Minnesota. It's a major market now, the Twin Cities. It wasn't back then. So we'd often miss on these movies. So when I finally got to see it was when I saw the big coming soon poster, Robot Jocks, in the grocery store's video store. I'm like, when is it coming out, and can I have that poster? I said, when's it coming out, and can I have that poster? They told me when it's coming out, and they said, yeah. And good news, guys, if you haven't seen it, because Shout Factory is releasing it on Blu-ray and DVD next year.
Oh,
Hey.
Yep.
Is there a DVD release coming? I don't have Blu-ray yet.
Oh, yeah.
It's a Scream Factory release, so probably both. Yeah.
I tried to find my poster of Robot Jocks. I actually have a poster of Robot Jocks from the video store. Only one side's trimmed because it was all crumpled and beat to hell, but I still have it, and I love that. It's shiny and glossy, and yeah. Robot Jocks. Glenn, anything to add about Robot Jocks?
It's a film.
Truth words have never been spoken.
Oh, that's why we love you, Glenn. So there you go, folks. You want some cheesy pre-Asylum fun? You want to check out Robot Jocks. It's still better than anything that Asylum has put out. Really, because
I do like the Asylum, but yeah, it is.
As far as quality-wise, you're right. The budget on this film is insane for what it ended up making and doing, and it's sad because
you got to think that back then they didn't have. I mean, today they would make have these CGI things that would probably look really good. Actually, back then they didn't have that, so they said, well, how do you have a battle between two 800-foot tall robots? Well, you miniaturize the stuff.
Sure.
Yep. So everything was done in stop motion miniatures, and it's something that even though he didn't get to release the film, Charles Band took those reins and did it. Did first Crash and Burn in the early days of Full Moon, and then Robot Wars, which often gets called Robot Jocks 2, but it has nothing to do.
And yeah, I love it too because of the concept. I mean, you got guys getting into robots, and this is before your Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, before your other, I mean, this really was a closest thing to like a live action, robot film that.
Live action Robotech, live action Gundam.
Yeah, it was the closest thing that at least I was when I was a kid, when I was younger. It's like, oh, I gotta see this, and I loved it. I loved it for all of its cheesy moments and big robots beating the crap out of each other. The precursor to Pacific Rim.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. I was just about to say that when they release it on DVD, they should the Blu-ray or whatever next year, they should have the ads that says, "We were Pacific Rim before it was cool."
So, folks, this is just scratching the surface of a post-apocalyptic films that came out in the 80s. I mean, that was one of the main genres out there. You couldn't go into a video store and you could reach your hand out and just randomly point, and especially in the sci-fi section, and you guys would probably agree that you could probably touch a post-apocalyptic film by just closing your eyes in the sci-fi section and pointing somewhere. I mean,
It was wonderful. It was a good time.
It was a good time because you got a whole range of production value and quality of film out of these early filmmakers that some went on to actually do big, huge things, and while others stayed in obscurity. So people pick on the low budget films, but everybody's got to start somewhere, and even some of the big names started somewhere, and just remember that. And so if you're interested, hope you found this spoiler room interesting and made your list of post-apocalyptic films. This is everything I had hoped for and more. You guys brought some great films tonight.
Well, I have to say that growing up in the 80s, where there was still that somewhat of a threat of the whole U.S. and Russia actually pushing the button, that we had a nice escape from the reality of nuclear war by watching movies about the world after nuclear war.
It did.
Our great escape.
As bad as these films were, they gave people a slim amount of hope that humanity would survive in some way, shape, or form, even if it was the most grotesque form.
Except the day after.
Except the day
Except
after.
the day after Dead Man Walk. Yeah. I mean, it's so hard to tell people that the younger people, like, when I grew up, it was such a paranoid time between the Cold War and everything. I was growing up and I was being told every day, like, so when the bomb drops, it wasn't even a matter of if. Like, so when the bomb drops, here's what you gotta do. Like, I'm like, there's a two-step thing. I'm going to put my head between my legs and kiss my ass goodbye. That's it.
Well, I mean,
it was like a foregone conclusion. Like, they're going to nuke us. It's or we're going to wind up nuking ourselves. And
you did have that fear. You did have that fear, definitely.
Yeah.
Do you think apocalyptic things are different now? I mean,
yes.
So what is it? Is it bio now? Is it?
It's bio. It's bio. It's chemical warfare. It's terrorism. It's a lot less black and white, because back then, if you lived, in the United States or in I guess actually most anywhere, aside from the Soviet Union or anything like that, your idea was that you actually had one place that this was going to probably come from. There's either going to come from this place or it was going to be an accident, but from us. Now you have, in this, I hate to even use the term, but because of the whole post 9/11 stuff, now people look at terrorists. Who's the latest group of crazies that's popping up? Where's it going to come from? What's their ideology going to be? Is it going to be chemical warfare? Is it going to be terrorist attacks? We don't know. So if people have that fear, and honestly, I don't really think they need to. It's not the same, guys.
The culture. I don't think. I think back then in the 80s, not just because I grew up during that time, but the paranoia seeped into every crevice of the culture. Here, you do have that worry. There is still that scare, but it hardly ever shows up in your pop culture, where in the 80s, it was prevalent in the pop culture, the paranoia. Not only did you get it in your news and in your written work and even in comics, you got it in movies, in music videos. I mean, it took everybody a long time to realize 99 Luft Balloons was about the nuclear war. I mean, everybody's like, 99 red balloons, Captain Kirk, and then she's like, this is about the bombs going off, right?
That's right. It's about people mistaking balloon launches for missiles, right?
Yeah. Suddenly that song takes a whole nother dark turn for everyone.
You're absolutely right, Mark. And now it's an age of when we talk about any kind of post-apocalyptic thing, it's like, well, it might happen. And often a lot of the people who are really beating the drums of that are either the people who are in policy, or they're kind of like your Alex Joneses of the world and stuff like that, where they're talking about, like, get in your bunkers now, kids, Back then, it had one definite focus, and like Mark said, it was everywhere. I mean, you couldn't escape it. And now there's not a definite source of where it would come from. There's not a definite form of what it would take if it would happen. And honestly, it's not even close to being as certain that it would happen. In fact, it's actually probably not going to happen.
No.
But back then, it was just a weird, different time. It was really freaking terrifying. I'm not gonna lie.
We all grew up in that time, and I think we can all agree that at late at night, I mean, you had that paranoia, and that worked its way into films, especially sci-fi. That was like the prominent. I mean, look at even freaking Star Trek. They talk about the world getting nuked and what happened after World War III. You know, I mean, that was everywhere. You got it in every place. And for me, one film that wasn't post-apocalyptic, but I'll bring it up, and I'm hoping other people have seen it. It was a film called Dreamscape.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I actually just watched it last week for the
that freaking movie scared the piss out of me.
Yeah.
That is a scary ass film. If you've ever watched it, I mean, I'm glad you guys are nodding your head at it, because for me, I remember watching that and getting scared to hell, and not just because the scary ass snake guy in it.
No,
the freaking nuclear war city imagery that they show after the bomb drop was the most scary, realistic at the time feeling scenes that just, it was like, holy shit, you know?
And then you saw that, being played in films like The Dead Zone, Terminator, and stuff like that. All these things that all it really takes is either some kind of glitch or some nutbar who thinks that he's hearing voices from God or thinks that he knows better. Hit a button, you know, and it was like. It like freaked us out. No wonder we were all on freaking drugs and listening to metal.
No wonder cocaine was prevalent back then.
You guys don't think that message is still around? I mean, shit. I just. Well,
it
aside
is, but
from
it's not as
Interstellar,
focused and ubiquitous, I don't think.
I don't know, man. I just watched. I'm thinking of like even a terrible movie like The Colony, which not only has the threat of it snowing eternally, but also has the threat of if you sneeze, you're immediately pushed off the encampment. And there are tons of movies. I don't know. I think these apocalypse movies are all similar. And they've all been similar for maybe 40 years now. I mean, the scenario changes from movie to movie. But I don't care if it's Free Jack or The Road Warrior or fucking, it's all the same thing. We are screwed if we don't, if we don't get together and figure it out somehow. I mean, I don't know. That's my take on it. I don't see any difference from decade to decade to apocalypse themes. I mean, there are movies that cram them all in, like The Colony, terrible film, but worth watching. It's on Netflix. Just for, just see Bill Paxton and Lawrence Fishburne in one scene together talking about how they're going to save mankind. Or even, the Interstellar, which we just did a spoiler room on. I don't know, man. I see these themes for the past 40 or 50 years, or even back to the original Twilight Zone episodes, really, to where something bad is coming, and whether it's a plague or an eternal storm, we got to get our shit together.
Yeah, but I really, my only counter to that would be it was in our politics, it was in our music, it was in our everything, and it was like when the wall fell, we had like a short period of time where it was, I don't know, it kind of felt like we were in free fall in that particular mode. It was like, oh, we're not at war with the Russians anymore? Really? Whoa.
You're like, wait, we didn't have to worry about this all this time? What now?
What do we do now? And that's exactly right. And I think that the tone is there, but I think in a lot of cases with the movies, it's now more not maybe an active force or actively done by, you look at like The Stand. That was science gone amok. It's still sort of there, but I think it's different. It was like the movies reflected what was going on in society, but it was just like at a certain point now it's like they're rehashing old ideas. You know, I mean, we still, you know, the threat of terrorism constantly, blah, 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 whatever. But it's kind of there, but it's not like it used to be. It wasn't, I mean, it had been kind of fed to everybody for generations, literally, that the Russians were going to come and take all our crap and hand it to everybody else, and they're going to kill us all, whatever. But that's
this might sound a little, I may be way off, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. What is it, would it be possibly that we just have a more cynical culture than we did in the 80s? Possibly?
Yeah.
Is that too much? I mean, you know, because in the 80s, really, I mean, growing up in it, not just because you're growing up, but just in general, the culture, there were the yuppies and that, but there was a lot of, maybe there wasn't, maybe I was off, one of you could probably help, but it just seemed like there was a lot less cynicism in the general populace than there is now.
Well, our parents had been through the 60s, so you know, there was that, we can accomplish everything if we can just pull together, and you know, and now we've had 9/11, we've had you know, multiple wars that we're still fighting.
We're fighting amongst each other. I mean, I mean, there's a lot more inner turmoil too in the U.S., which, I mean, you had that before in the 80s, but with the one focus being on Russia, the entire country focused all of its, for lack of a better term, hatred towards
the evil empire.
One country, whether they deserved it, bad government or no or not. Yeah.
and we worked at being better than those guys. So we thought of ourselves as better than those guys. We're actually a good culture. We're a good country. Those guys suck. We rock. And after, I think, 9/11, I don't know, Glenn, if you had any thoughts, am I off? After 9/11, that I think that mentality changed to where, oh yeah, we're not really a great nation, are we?
I think that thought was already kind of there before 9/11.
Right.
Well, then people started.
I think 9/11 said that, oh my God, we're vulnerable.
Yeah, we're vulnerable. We actually started to rally after 9/11 in kind of a similarly, you know, way. Like, you know, hey, we don't know. We never saw this coming. What do we do now? And unfortunately, there wasn't really that. Unfortunately, we kind of started seeing like through it a lot sooner. Well, not necessarily, unfortunately, and so it just was not the same, you know. Right. So now, so there was like a lot of rallying at the beginning, and then there was a lot of skepticism.
I think, up until that point, it was kind of a joke or that far-fetched scenario.
Right, and it's kind of a fantasy sort of, and I think that's what. You have those 80s apocalyptic films. Those were, you know, I don't think we get as many now because of the change in the culture and the mentality, I think that had a direct effect on the type, and it affected horror movies, it affected everything. I mean, it was a major event in our nation's history, but that had such an effect on our pop culture, you know, in a different way, though. I think, and maybe it's because we have more outlets for information now. Maybe if we had these same channels back then, we wouldn't have as much paranoia in the 80s, and maybe not as many apocalyptic films about it, you know, as popular, because, you know, movie makers would realize, oh yeah, they really don't kind of believe in that. They realized, they Googled searched that and found out that was not, you know, a spy. That was in Kansas for the Russians.
That's another thing. Like our entire information structure is different. We didn't have anything like the internet or anything like that, where we could scrutinize everything from both genuine news sources and, you know, well.
And the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah, the Encyclopedia Britannica.
That was 8 years old when it got new to your library. It was already old.
Yeah.
But that's all you had.
But you had that one free volume and nothing else.
Yeah. One free volume. And it was always an obscure letter, too. It wasn't anything you could use. It wasn't like you got volume letter A. No, you got, like, X. Like,
I read Q cover to cover.
But the culture, I think, of the '80s is what helped spawn so many apocalyptic films. I think even more so than we get them today. No, Cole, you're right. We do still get that theme today. I mean, there was Book of Eli a few years back. And
Yeah,
that,
but do you guys really think that 9/11 affects the younger movie-going audience the way? I mean, it affects
No,
us.
not the same-
I don't
not
think
the same way.
teenagers are scared by that.
No, but
know
I think
teenagers,
that
I work with them. I think. I mean, there's a movie called Ouija that just came out that was hugely successful. Have you guys watched that thing? I mean, I can't relate to it. That is on a level that is, again, like, I think that the apocalypse for a younger movie-going audience isn't going to be on the level it is for us. I think maybe we're sophisticated and older. I think,
We're older.
I really do. I think maybe we're dating ourselves. I think that the true apocalypse in terms of cinema is the same as it's always been. I don't think that it's terrorists or 9/11 for the younger crowd. I really don't. That's just
I
me.
don't think it is. I don't think it necessarily is either. I think it does kind of boil down to kids today. They don't even know.
but the culture is different, though. I mean,
It is, absolutely.
I mean, look at I've mentioned it. I talked to someone else before, and I know this is kind of going off, but it still relates. Look at your comedies, look at your films, look at your songs of the '80s, all geared towards the teenagers and teenage themed so much. I mean, we get some of that now, but it seemed more prevalent back then that it was.
The teenagers still love that shit, Mark.
You know.
They still laugh that shit, Mark. I swear that shit is prevalent. That fluffy brain garbage. I work with teenagers, man. They don't listen to deep, dark music. They've got that stuff. They really do. It exists.
I mean, I turned on the Pops 40 channel once and listened to the songs and listened to the lyrics, and I don't know, you listen to the lyrics of the '80s, it was all about teenage rebellion, though, and about, fighting the system, and,
Well, people were still angry about disco.
Yeah.
But they're reflected in the films of them too, though, against the system, outrage, whatever, and I just don't feel that. I listen to the top 40, I see what the young teenage films are now, and they are different, and it's a different culture, and it changes over generations. I admit it. Get off my lawn. But I think we all agree, even with that, even with our age and that, you look at the '80s apocalyptic films definitely had that recurring special theme to them that reflected the paranoia that was in the culture at that time. I mean, that was prevalent throughout. You get the apocalyptic film now, it still shows fears, like in Interstellar, of the global warming and or the change in climate, but you don't have, I think, that paranoia as well throughout the culture that we had in the '80s with that fear of the nuclear war, is what I'm saying. You have smaller pockets of that. And I think it was just more prevalent, and that's why you just had the sheer volume of post-apocalyptic films. And let me tell you, if you had a location that had sand dunes, you were going to get called by a filmmaker.
It was like if you had a quarry in England, Doctor Who would be on the phone.
Well, we'll have to continue this debate when the new Mad Max comes out. Maybe it's successful.
It'll be tropical. It'll be tropical.
We could definitely come back around and see how the new Mad Max. We could compare the new Mad Max versus the old one. Sounds like a future spoiler room. Thank you, Cole. Look for that when the new Mad Max comes out. We'll have to see how that holds up with its new translation versus what we all remember and what the original was like. So I think we're going to wrap it up tonight, though, folks. So we're going to do like we always do in the spoiler room, give a chance for our guests here to tell you where you can find them when they're not babbling about movies here with me. Brad, go ahead first.
I'm nowhere. No,
you
actually,
are everywhere.
I work with a group of people, galacticnetcasts.com. We've got a few shows, Alien Invasion, where we talk about aliens in cinema and books and all sorts of stuff. We've also got the Sci-Fi Geeks Club, which we usually interview somebody that independent filmmaker or author or somebody somehow, some way involved in sci-fi at some level, and we discuss current topics and then find out a little bit of what our guest is doing. So, galacticnetcast.com. Boom.
Boom, and there you go. Cole, how about you, sir?
I'm on Facebook, Cole Meredith, or my production company is Shadows and Lovers on Facebook, or Horror Roar, where I just goof around. But as they always say, Facebook is free and movies are expensive, so find me on Facebook, please. I can't afford a site.
Horror Roar is an excellent group. Everyone should check it out. If nothing else, for the pictures that they post for the horror fan up there. Great Facebook group there. And Glenn, sir, Mr. Bittner, the big deal himself, please tell us where we can find you at.
Called Google, you lazy bitches. Look me up. Find me on, and I wonder why I have so few viewers. You can find me on YouTube, Naked Noble Productions with the Movie Bunker. You can find me on Facebook, Naked Noble Productions, and you follow me on Twitter for any up-to-date information I may give at Naked Hobo.
You should have that on a card, just your name, and when it says website, just put Google it, bitches.
Good idea.
And Paul, you, sir?
I'll be too busy Googling the rollerblader warriors taken by force. But you can find me
online.
Yes, you can find me at forsakenfilmreviews.wordpress.com.
Excellent. And Movieocrity, Mr. Scott Davis, go.
You already said it. You can find me at movieocrity.com. That's where everything I'm going to write, any podcast I'm going to do, any video episode I'm going to do, it's all going to be on there. Movieocrity.com. You can also find me on Twitter at Movieocrity, and my actual name on Facebook. Okay, just don't spam me or anything like that, because I'll get missed.
Look out, Goat Porn Monthly. It's going to be subscribed to you now.
Oh, starting with the tame stuff, are we?
I like to ease them into it.
That reminds me of yeah.
And as always, you can go to specialmindproductions.com, where you can find links to all these fantastic people's websites and blogs and such, and you can see my material, either Final Cut reviews or these spoiler rooms, the past spoiler rooms. I've got a new link there called the Spoiler Room Archive, where you can easily go to find all our older episodes, or you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. If you do, please review and at least rate the channel. We'd really appreciate it. Like to see at least one rating up there. Thank you for all our new listeners who have come in. We got actually I saw it, 53 listeners in after our Interstellar one. So we
wow, really?
The Interstellar Hangout got over 100 views. Now,
Wow.
No one watched all of it, but at least they clicked on it and showed a little interest in it, so which we always appreciate. Folks, thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you got some insight on some 80s apocalypse films. And until next time, remember, with the Spoiler Room, the conversation is fresh, but we do definitely spoil the movies.